I'm Ben Blackwell, and I'm a professor here in New Testament at Houston Baptist University. And importantly, I'm the director of HBU's Houston Theological Seminary. And so I'm excited to talk to you today about our Doctor of Ministry program that we're starting in the fall of 2022 as part of our seminary. And so, of course, the seminary is broader than this. It's training pastors and church leaders at the master's level, and even through our innovative BA to MDiv program. And so we're excited to expand this course offering into a new level to serve even those that are more established in ministry. I came to HBU about 10 years ago. I had the opportunity to live in England for 5 years, and so that's where I did my PhD in New Testament, and had the opportunity to work with some great scholars. In fact, I worked with N.T. Wright for a couple of years, and so helped with some of his work on Paul, and got to do my own work on Paul there as well. And so after finishing that and teaching some there, came here to HBU and have been teaching New Testament and theology. Particular interest of mine is how people have applied the Bible throughout history, and so Christian ethics is a big issue. But even, and that's why I'm here to direct the DMin program, is what does it look like to live out the biblical truth in today's society? And so our goal is to help those that are leading the church to do that well. So not to only live in the past, but also not just to be driven by the current winds of culture, but to bring the truth of the Bible to our culture today.
Dr. Blackwell, it is really great to have you today. And I do want to underscore the fact that you are Associate Professor of Theology. You're the Director of Houston Baptist University's Houston Theological Seminary. And then you're overseeing this Doctor of Ministry, what we abbreviate DMin degree.
Yes.
Very exciting, this degree is coming to HBU.
Yeah, it's a new step for us, and so it's taking what we're best at and just taking that to another group of people that are leading the church. So,
you know, I want to say this, that a lot of pastors obviously have bachelor's degrees. Most have an MDiv. But when we get into graduate studies, a DMin or PhD, as is the case with you, not everybody has a DMin. You know, I come from a background, I was a church builder long before I really pursued graduate education. And there's a lot of guys like that across the country that, you know, they got an MDiv, they're building a church, God's giving increase to their ministry, but the culture's all changed now.
yeah.
And, you know, what worked 15, 20, 25 years ago, we have to engage the culture cognitively. We've got to fulfill the mandate of Jesus to help people to love God, not just with their heart and soul, but with their mind.
Yeah.
The DMin is important in that regard. I think it's more important now than it's ever been. Can you explain why?
Yeah, in that sense, culture is changing, right? I mean, with the technology, everything else there. And so part of the reason for the DMin, and in fact, one of the tracks we have is in faith and culture, and it's drawing off of our apologetics faculty. We have one of the largest apologetics faculties in the United States, and I guess in that sense for the whole world. And so they're experts at what is the nature of culture today. What are those movements then in which we can speak into? But the other side of what we're bringing this to, the other track that we have is in New Testament. And again, we have one of the largest New Testament faculties in the U.S., and so taking that biblical truth and connecting it with the contemporary culture and how those intersect. And so we have a lot of pastors that want to refresh and have a better deep dive into culture, and then others that just want to be personally refreshed and just have that deep dive in Scripture. And so those are the two areas that, you know, and we're excited to bring those two conversations together.
You know, I said to you before we started filming that, you know, of all the education I was exposed to, what I appreciated the most was the DMin experience. And Dr. Evans, Craig Evans, who's one of our New Testament scholars, was my supervisor. There's something about that dynamic of an environment for someone who is engaged in ministry or interested in ministry. You brought up two really powerful components, apologetics and New Testament. Explain the program because there's some dynamism there, but we don't want anyone to feel daunted that they can't continue what they're doing and also do the DMin.
Yeah, I think that's right. As somebody once told me, is that if you can do graduate work anywhere, you can do graduate work anywhere.
Sure.
And so that if you completed your master's work, that there's surely the opportunity to pursue that. And what this provides is a community to do that with. So much of even my own life, I enjoy reading and doing things, but it's when I have that accountability to do it with others and can talk through and process that with others. And so that's what so much of the benefit of a DMin is, that you have a peer group, and if you're in ministry and you're teaching, you're usually teaching people that have less knowledge than you. So you're just trying to bring them up, whereas you don't have those other people that are your peers that help sharpen you, or even more so, people that are further down the road that can lead you into that. And so in that sense, like, we're all on this journey, and so what happens is oftentimes we do our ministerial studies, 20s, maybe 30s, and then you're 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and you just want to fill the tank back up, and so whether that's academically, right, and so that's our goal here, whether it's to fill up kind of emotionally and spiritually as you have a peer group that you can process some of the hard issues that you've dealt with, or even just one of the things that we're excited to do is incorporate spiritual formation into this as well. And so it's not just about the coursework, but when you're here for the residential time, that there'll be space for spiritual practices and things like that to fill your soul and heart, and not just your mind and that.
Spiritual formation for a minister, extremely important. One of the statistics that I ran across was, of all those who enter the ministry 35 years later, less than 20% are still in the ministry.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know there's a high casualty rate for people entering the ministry. It's not an easy assignment. And what I love about what you're planning, in fact, the current issue of the Pillars magazine, we're highlighting an inside look, and I want to get a picture of this, an inside look, HBU's new Doctor of Ministry program, Director Benjamin Blackwell, and there's our good friend Dr. Phil Talon. A distinct aspect of the program will be the intentional focus on developing thought leaders who are great practitioners. That's a great sentence. Explain that to us.
Yeah, and so there's two sides of this. So oftentimes you have the thought leaders that, in some sense, the PhD types, right? That they do the deep dive and it's conceptual, but oftentimes, and I've experienced this myself, it's disconnected from the church.
Right.
And then some other sides are great with practitioners, and they're good at doing things. And oftentimes the connection between these two is lacking. And so our goal actually is to inhabit that space. And so with this, like having great scholars like Craig Evans, right? A preeminent, worldwide, internationally respected New Testament scholar, right? That you're engaging the Bible at that highest level.
Right.
That, and it's not assuming that everybody's going to get in and do all the abstract, participle that, this, that, the other, but what is the text saying, right? And focus on that. But then also, like, what is it saying to the church today? And so really bringing that to the practitioner level. And so in that sense, that one of the things that often happens with DMins is they look very much like an EDD. And that's not bad, because it's helping people process through information. But you have to learn a lot of statistics and do these interviews before and after and things like that. And what it does is it makes you very good at some of the focused level. But what we're wanting to do is bridge that in between, in the sense of bringing thought leaders to this. And so helping, because I think what PhDs may have been designed to do or not doing, they've got the thought leader, but they're not bringing it to the church. And so inhabiting that space that comes between them.
Man, that is so well said. I mean, and what a great ambition in this. Doctor of Ministry, DMin. We use a lot of these terms that I know some of the folks, but I look at my own son-in-law. He was on my staff for 10 years. I had a BA, got an MDiv, had a passion to launch a church, And so, I took him to Korea, where he was exposed to, Youngie Cho's church, 700,000 people. And sure enough, it was a great environment for him to say to me, Jerry, I think I'm ready to start a church. Well, now he's running about 1,500, building a $10 million building, but he really wants a D-Min, right? Because he loves study, and he realizes that he has a job now to catechize his people. The culture is a bit hostile in some respects to, the Christian ethic. Explain to not only Christian, but pastors like Christian that are watching of how this D-Min and their assimilation through HBU, how long it takes, and how it will help them in their future ministry.
Yeah, so on the nuts and bolts of the program, it's a 3-year program, and so we've designed it to where you'll take a course, typical 3-hour course each semester, and where you'll come to class for a week. So you'll do the prep work
So
at
it's
home.
an intensive.
Yeah, it's an intensive residential here, and so again, do some teaching, seminar time, spiritual formation, things like that, and of course then finish up papers and other things after that. Also be a research component to every semester, and so that's by synchronous video for those outside of town, and those here in town, obviously welcome here. And part of that is helping develop from day one, the project, right? Every doctoral project has some kind of focus there, personal focus, and so you don't have to come in with the project. Of course, everybody has different ideas, interests, and so narrowing those down over the first couple of years so that by the end of that 2-year process that you have a defined project, you've got a supervisor picked out, and so the last year you're still doing some coursework, but you're also doing your individual project there, and so it's guided all the way through, but also to build community. If you only see each other a year, part of these video conference time, and for again in person for those here in Houston, but it's to develop relationships. The whole idea is not just knowledge. Everybody can read more books, but you're engaging with people that'll pray with you, engaging with people that'll challenge you and ask those hard questions that you can only ask, eye to eye, and over a chat group and things like that, or just don't come that same way. One of the other things too is just to expose people to research. We're trying to help people think higher thoughts, and so in that sense, as with most things, you need to engage things a step beyond where you are. And so we have a New Testament seminar, Apologetics seminar, where you hear us that are writing books on justification in Paul, or Craig Evans on Second Temple Judaism, present research that we're publishing, and so in that sense you get a flavor of that as well. So it's not just the peer level, but again, taking that step ahead.
And so on the dissertation, which I guess is the third step, what would be the median length of that dissertation? Is it about 50,000 words, or? Yeah,
it's going to be different. So in the sense that the New Testament ones will, be more biblical focused, but then also, of course, what does it look like to have that message impact the world? But with apologetics, there are going to be different things there. So some of those will be more conceptual, like what are the nature of postmodernism and how we engage that world of pluralism. Others will be more applied projects, because you're not just wanting to think about thinking or whatever, you're wanting to do it, right? And so some will be writing other manuscripts, things that are targeted at a wider audience rather than just talking to other academics, I guess, in that sense. And so it'll have, every component will have that, a little bit of both in that sense.
We're talking to Dr. Ben Blackwell, the Associate Professor of Theology, Director of Houston Baptist University's Houston Theological Seminary, and he oversees the HBU's new Doctor of Ministry, what we call D-Min degree. Dr. Blackwell's book, Engaging Theology, highlights the integrative approach and shows the relevance of theology for the life of the church. He loves teaching it. What a great background you had with N.T. Wright. I've been to England several times, and you can't go to England without feeling the impact. Well, really, can you go anywhere without feeling the impact of N.T. Wright? I mean, he's really a global scholar. What was that like?
Yeah, the thing that I say is he's the real deal. So sometimes, what you see is not what you get, but he is a man of faith, of deep faith and conviction. And so he's also like the larger than life on stage. He's a little bit larger than life in person too. And very formative for me was when I would meet with him and we would have academic meetings. As Bishop of Durham, he also had a chaplain, and so every day they would pray through a version of the Book of Common Prayer in the morning, and it would be a 30, 45-minute commitment. And so I had the opportunity to go anytime I'd have a meeting and go pray with them before we did these other things. And I think it was, as with anybody in the world, his constant demands, and for somebody to commit that much time daily, I think was a testimony to me and just very formative in that sense. And a lot of ways my opportunity to work with him was a Forrest Gump experience. I actually didn't know much about him.
Right.
Friends of mine had just recommended the University of Durham and John Barclay, who I ended up working with, and who is internationally well-known, respected scholar in his own right. But I hadn't gone through all these debates on Paul and things, and I just went to Durham. And in a lot of ways, there's this perspective on Paul called the New Perspective, and Durham is kind of the Vatican of that.
Yes.
There are several scholars that were there, and I didn't even know it existed, and so it was kind of ironic then that I would end up working with N.T. Wright as a kind of a neophyte there. But it was a great experience and very formative for me. And I think one of the things that guides us here at HBU with that is that coheres with Wright is in the sense that he sees the Bible as a narrative that holds together. And so what's going on in the Old Testament is not separated from the New Testament, that Christ is the climax of this movement. And so even if for those that are interested in the New Testament, we're very much interested in seeing how the New Testament fits within this larger story. So even if you're more interested in the Old Testament per se than, say, New Testament, you still find a welcome home here of how Christians have read the Old Testament and find that fulfillment in the New Testament.
Now, the new Doctor of Ministry degree at Houston Baptist University begins officially when?
Fall 2022.
Fall 2022. There's still time to enroll?
Yep, we have open spots still.
And talk to us about the application and acceptance process.
Yeah, it's straightforward. You'll apply. Of course, it's all online these days, and just have a handful of questions about what your background is, what your interest is, to see how you fit here. And again, we're not trying to be the Doctor of Ministry program for all people, right? There are other programs that are better at missions or better at preaching and things like that. Our program, centers on these two tracks, and so in that sense. But so part of your application process is just explaining how you see yourself fitting within that, and then after that, there'll just be an interview with the committee there, and so most of those have gone fairly straightforward, and so it's not too onerous of a process, I would say.
And then, my wife Christy and I, we both did our D-Mins together, husband and wife, which was really an interesting experience. We really enjoyed it. I mean, we really did. And I look back at Christy, and I think the day I remember her laughing loudest was after she defended her dissertation.
Okay.
I met her at the library, which was like a little pub there, and what a joy to keep on learning. I don't like to be a critic of anybody in the ministry because I know how difficult it is to be in the ministry. Mm-hmm. But I want to reach out to my brothers and sisters that are in ministry that the culture has shifted, whether we recognize it or not. Mm-hmm. Our job to make disciples is very challenging, and we need to have substance to what we say. And I know you, like me, have listened to some people they're doing their greatest job effort to preach. They just need some more substance to their message, right? Yeah. We don't say that critically. We say that because of the reality of the world we're in. How will a D-Min bring greater flavor to that that practitioner doing ministry, a pastor, male, female, whoever that's doing the work of the kingdom.
Yeah, in that sense, I think the whole job of a minister is pouring out, right? And sometimes you need to be filled up, right?
Yes, of course.
In fact, that's the problem with the longevity, and particularly if you've been preaching and teaching for several years, it's like eventually you catch yourself repeating themes over and over again because that's what you know best. And so a big focus here is like for those that are focused on the New Testament side is that we're going to help you see the full flavor. And not just kind of the 2D version of the New Testament, but the 3D version. So what's the historical nuance there that sets this out, and what were early Christians fighting, and debating between themselves? And so when you capture that, then you can capture the nuance better, and you have the depth then in the 3D, the color version, whatever the metaphor you want to use there. And so you have that depth, and that you're full of the knowledge and of what the biblical truth is there to present. But then there's also understanding contemporary culture. We have often a very flat view or a 2D version of our own understanding of our culture. And of course, it's the classic fish that lives in water, right? That doesn't, it's hard to take a step out. And so part of that is understanding how the church has existed through time. I mean, that's one of the things that we do well here is looking at how Christians of different ages have lived out the Bible so that you can see that nuance and difference. So like the Reformation, for instance, Dietrich Bonhoeffer describes the Reformation as a holiness movement, calling the church to a level of holiness. And most people don't think of the Reformation in that same way. They think it's a doctrinal debate. But and as you look at the way that they're reading the Bible and the Reformation, then that helps us understand kind of the cultural nuances we have today, and ask that question, like, where's holiness in the church today? I mean, if people don't preach over holiness in that same way. And, like for instance there, we've made some of these cultural things like drinking or tattoos or wearing shorts at church, and, some of these things that had cultural significance, but not necessarily theological significance in that same sense. And so if we've lost those or we've kind of marginalized those rightly, then what are those things that make us distinctively Christian today? And how do we live that out in a world that is, not receptive of that, and where it seems intolerant or things like that?
There is a respect level gained as we become educated in Christian ministry, and I will say this, I remember after we finished our DMin degree, there were certain lay people we were ministering to, it spoke to them that we took the time to do that study, because they were professionals, obviously, who had taken time to do study in their own careers. I mean, walking away from this program, there's going to be an added benefit multiply across the board. Not to mention, I mean, to me, Craig Evans is like family. Because when I was doing my DMin, I would go over to his house and eat chocolate chip cookies and hang out and ask him 500 questions about the New Testament. Pick every hard passage I could. He always had an explanation. You do build deep bonds in this program, don't you? It's a little different than just the normal classroom. There's a real interactivity to this DMin, isn't there? A mentorship.
Yeah, I would say that's the part of having the monthly meetings that, again, they're video synchronous or in person, but then also the intensives, and it's like church camp, right? You make good friends at church camp or retreats, and so of course it's not just here to relax and sit by the side of the pool, but there's dinners together, meals. One of the things that we're excited about, we live in Houston, right? It's one of the most diverse city in the United States, and so it provides opportunities to see how different ministries are doing things.
Sure.
Got some great art museums that we have planned, and so much of this is like understanding cultures, like looking at the artifacts of culture. So whether that's kind of high art with art museums or other forms of that. And so being here intensive allows for those opportunities to, be outside of the classroom together. There's something about, fluorescent lighting, I always say that kind of quenches the spirit. And so when you're in people's homes or you're eating together, it's like the masks come off, and you can kind of have that openness and honesty and develop those relationships, and eat the cookies together.
Yeah, it's interesting too that you do interact with challenging, formidable thinking, which causes us to think. And Dr. Ben Blackwell, what a gift you are to HBU, and we're so grateful. You can communicate with Dr. Blackwell at bblackwell@hbu.edu. Remember, you can visit hbu.edu/School of Christian Thought. There's all kinds of descriptions there. Current Pillars magazine tells us fall of 2022, the D-Min Doctor of Ministry degree launches, and you can be a part of that class. Learn more about HBU at hbu.edu/admissions, 281-649-3211. Our graduate school, 281-649-3269. And of course, we're very grateful that we have students now in nearly all 50 states. There's only 8 states and soon to be none left that don't have a Houston Baptist University student who comes to us, hbuonline.com, 855-428-1960. Dr. Blackwell, I'm really excited about this. I'm so grateful for your leadership. We're going to look forward to get reports. Maybe you can bring a student or two, and let's do a podcast together and talk about what it's like being in the incubator on the journey of a D-Min, okay?
I'd love it. Love to come back.
Thank you.
Thanks.